The desperate agreement Vikram Shah glared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror of Mumbai's most exclusive restaurant. At 32, he was the youngest CEO in India's tech industry, with a reputation as ruthless as his company was innovative. Tonight was supposed to be the informal prelude to sealing his most ambitious deal yet, a merger with Singapore-based Horizon Tech that would establish VicTech as a global player. Mr. Shah, the investors are asking for you. His assistant's voice came through the door, precise and professional as always. 2 minutes, Anya, he replied, straightening his already impeccable tie. The evening had been progressing perfectly until Priyanka, his ex-girlfriend, had appeared as the date of one of the Horizon executives. Her pointed comments about his inability to maintain relationships had caused uncomfortable glances among the investors. Family stability reflects business stability. Mr. Shah, Mr. Tan, Horizon's CEO, had remarked, our shareholders are traditional people. They invest in men who understand commitment. Vikram exited the bathroom to find Anya Kapoor waiting, tablet in hand as always. At 28, she had been his executive assistant for 3 years, the longest anyone had survived working directly under him. The damage assessment? He asked tersely. Significant, Anya replied, her voice calm despite the situation. Mr. Tan has been asking about your personal life. Apparently, their main investor, Mrs. Wong, believes strongly in family values and has concerns about entrusting billions to someone with your reputation. Vikram cursed under his breath. 5 years building this deal and it could collapse because I'm not married? This is business, not a matchmaking service. Nevertheless, I know what they expect. Vikram snapped, then immediately regretted it. Anya was the only person at VicTech who wasn't afraid of him, and he valued that more than he'd admit. She merely raised an eyebrow. We should return. Your absence is becoming conspicuous. As they walked back toward the private dining room, Vikram's mind raced. What if I told them I was engaged? Anya glanced at him sideways. Lying to potential business partners seems unwise. Not lying, anticipating. I could find someone suitable quickly enough. In the 3 weeks before the final signing, someone convincing enough to fool seasoned business people? Anya shook her head. They'd need to know your habits, your preferences, your schedule. They paused outside the dining room door. Vikram suddenly turned to Anya, his eyes narrowing with calculation. You know all those things. Anya blinked. I'm your assistant, not a candidate for... It would be temporary, Vikram interrupted. Just until the deal closes. 6 months at most. You can't be serious, she whispered. I've never been more serious. You're intelligent, presentable, and already know everything about me. It's the perfect solution. Mr. Shah, this is highly inappropriate. The dining room door opened suddenly, revealing Mr. Tan himself. Ah, there you are. And who is this lovely young woman? Before Anya could respond, Vikram placed his hand on the small of her back and smiled with unexpected warmth. Mr. Tan, I'd like you to meet Anya Kapoor, my fiancée. Anya's shocked expression was fortunately interpreted by Mr. Tan as modest surprise at the introduction. Your fiancée? But I thought... Mr. Tan looked confused. We've kept it private, Vikram smoothly interjected. Given my public profile, we wanted to enjoy our engagement without media attention. As Mr. Tan enthusiastically led them back inside to introduce Anya to the others, Vikram whispered in her ear, play along, and I'll double your salary, triple it, she whispered back through a forced smile, and we need to talk about terms later. By the end of the evening, Anya had charmed the entire Horizon team with her intelligence and grace. Mrs. Wong, the elderly main investor, had particularly taken to her, repeatedly mentioning how pleased she was that Vikram had found such a suitable partner. In the car ride back to the VicTech building, silence hung between them until Anya finally spoke. This can't possibly work. It already has. Did you see how they responded to you? The deal is practically secured. And what happens when they expect to see a wedding? To meet my family? When they realize your fiancé is just your assistant playing dress-up? Vikram stared out the window at Mumbai's glittering skyline, the empire he'd built from nothing. He couldn't lose this deal. Then we make it real, he said quietly. Legally, at least. Anya stared at him. You're suggesting we actually get married? A business arrangement. Everything on paper, witnessed and legal. After the deal closes and integration is complete, we quietly divorce. You're insane. I'm pragmatic. And so are you. Or you wouldn't have lasted 3 years working for me. He turned to face her. Think of it as a promotion. Executive wife with appropriate compensation. Against her better judgment, Anya found herself considering it. Her younger sister's medical school tuition was stretching her finances thin, and her parents' small business was struggling. If we did this, and that's a massive if, I would need guarantees. A contract. Of course, Vikram nodded. I'll have something drawn up tomorrow. As the car pulled up to the VicTech building, Anya made her decision. I want a non-disclosure agreement, a predetermined settlement, and my position guaranteed after we conclude the arrangement. Vikram extended his hand. Do we have a deal, Ms. Kapoor? Looking at his outstretched hand, Anya felt a strange mix of trepidation and exhilaration. We have a negotiation, Mr. Shah. The deal comes after I see the terms. As she shook his hand, neither suspected that the contract they were about to sign would change far more than just their professional relationship. Paper walls, the Rediscover penthouse apartment on the 40th floor of Infinity Towers had always felt more like a showroom than a home to Vikram. Minimalist furniture, monochromatic color scheme, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Mumbai's skyline. It was designed to impress, not comfort. Now, as he watched Anya wheel her suitcases into the guest bedroom, the space felt suddenly different. The housekeeping staff comes on Tuesdays and Fridays, he explained, following her with awkward formality. They've been informed we're married, but not that it's temporary. Anya nodded, surveying the spacious guest room that would be her home for the next 6 months. And what exactly have you told them about me? Your staff must be confused about your assistant suddenly becoming your wife. I've informed HR that you've been promoted to Chief of Strategic Partnerships, which isn't entirely untrue, Vikram replied with a hint of amusement. Priya from legal will handle your workload until we hire a replacement assistant. The marriage ceremony 3 days ago had been clinical, a civil procedure with only the required witnesses present. The contract they'd signed beforehand was even more detailed than the marriage license. Separate bedrooms, clear financial terms, and a comprehensive exit strategy once the merger was complete. The Horizon team has invited us to dinner tomorrow, Vikram said, leaning against the doorframe. Mrs. Wong specifically requested your presence. I'll be there, Anya replied, unpacking her clothes methodically. I've already researched her background and interests. We'll have plenty to discuss. Vikram watched her efficient movements, so familiar from years of observing her organize his chaotic schedule. You don't have to be my assistant anymore, you know? You can just be your wife? Anya supplied with raised eyebrows. I'm not sure I know how to do that without a detailed job description. For the first time since this arrangement began, Vikram laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. Fair enough. I'll leave you to settle in. The first week of their marriage passed with the awkwardness of two colleagues suddenly sharing living space. They established routines that minimized interaction. Vikram left for the gym at 5:30 a.m., while Anya preferred running in the building's indoor track after he departed. They rarely ate breakfast together, and dinners were often spent with business associates as they performed their roles for the merger negotiations. By the second week, small changes began to appear in the apartment. A colorful throw pillow on the sterile white couch, fresh flowers on the dining table, the scent of proper cooking instead of takeout containers. One evening, Vikram returned home earlier than usual to find Anya in the kitchen, the counter covered with ingredients as she spoke on speakerphone. Add the mustard seeds after the oil is hot. Didi, she was saying, and wait for them to pop before adding the cumin. Noticing Vikram, she smiled briefly and pointed to the refrigerator. He opened it to find a container labeled Vikram in neat handwriting. I made extra, she explained after ending the call. You mentioned liking buttered chicken, and I was cooking anyway. You didn't have to do that, he said, unexpectedly touched by the gesture. I know. That's why I did it. She returned to her cooking. My sister Divya is attempting our mother's recipes for the first time. Long-distance cooking lessons have become our Tuesday tradition. Vikram couldn't remember the last time he'd participated in any family tradition. How is her medical school going? Anya looked surprised that he remembered. Well, challenging, but she's thriving. The money helps, of course. The unspoken acknowledgement of their arrangement hung between them, breaking the momentary warmth. The Horizon technical team sent over their integration proposal, he said, reverting to business. I'd value your input, actually. You've overseen enough of our operations to spot potential issues. Later that night, they sat at opposite ends of the dining table, laptops open, discussing the technical challenges of merging the company's systems. It felt familiar, comfortable, until Vikram realized it was nearly midnight and they were still talking. We should stop, he said abruptly. Early meeting tomorrow. Anya nodded, gathering her notes. Before you go, there's something in the financial projections that concerns me. The cost-cutting measures in Section 7, the redundancy plan? Vikram frowned. Standard procedure in mergers. Not standard to start with the junior staff while maintaining executive bonuses, Anya said quietly. Those entry-level programmers are the ones who built your core products. Vikram stiffened. Business decisions can't be sentimental. Is it sentimental to recognize value? She challenged. Those developers took a chance on VicTech when it was nothing. Their loyalty deserves better. The conversation might have escalated, but Vikram's phone rang. Mr. Tan, calling from Singapore despite the late hour. After the call, Vikram found Anya on the balcony, wrapped in a cardigan against the night breeze. Everything okay? She asked. Mrs. Wong wants to visit our home next week, he replied tensely. A dinner party. She says she wants to see how we live. Anya's eyes widened. This place screams bachelor pad. It doesn't look like a couple's home. Then we'll have to change that, Vikram said, a note of determination in his voice. Can you handle it? Of course, she answered, professional as always. I'll need your credit card in 2 days. Over the next 48 hours, the apartment transformed. Anya added subtle touches, framed photographs staged with a photographer friend, books they might plausibly read together, complimentary towels in the bathroom. Nothing ostentatious, but enough to suggest shared lives. The dinner party went flawlessly. Mrs. Wong delighted in their love story, carefully crafted to incorporate real elements of their professional history, and Vikram found himself unexpectedly comfortable with the fabrication. The way Anya described their first meeting, his interview questions, her unintimidated responses, held enough truth to feel almost real. Later that night, after their guests had departed, they stood in the kitchen cleaning up. You were convincing, Anya remarked, handing him a plate to dry. So were you, he replied. For a moment there, I almost believed we'd had that picnic at Juhu Beach. She smiled. Details make lies believable. I've watched you negotiate enough to learn that. As they worked side by side, Vikram noticed things he'd overlooked before. The small scar near her wrist, the way she hummed unconsciously when concentrating, how she always placed things precisely where they belonged. You never talk about your life outside work, he realized aloud. You never asked, she replied simply. The following Saturday, Vikram found himself alone in the apartment. Anya had mentioned something about volunteering, but he'd been distracted by emails. Restless, he wandered into the living room, noticing a book she'd left on the coffee table, Education Approaches for Underprivileged Communities. His phone chimed with a message from Anya. Running late. Workshop went longer than expected. There's food in the fridge. Curious, he pulled up her location on the shared app they'd installed for their couple charade. 20 minutes later, he stood outside a community center in one of Mumbai's less affluent neighborhoods, watching through the window as Anya sat surrounded by children, reading animatedly from a picture book. She spotted him as she exited the building, surprise evident on her face. Vikram, what are you doing here? For once, the calculating CEO had no strategic answer. I wanted to see what you do on Saturdays. I teach literacy classes, she explained, suddenly self-conscious. These kids have potential but limited resources. Why didn't you mention this before? She shrugged. It wasn't relevant to our arrangement. As they walked toward his car, a small girl ran up to Anya offering a crudely drawn picture. For you, teacher Anya. Anya knelt down, accepting the gift with genuine delight. Thank you, Pooja. It's beautiful. Watching this interaction, Vikram felt something shift inside him, a realization that the woman he'd married for business reasons had depths he'd never bothered to explore. The paper walls between their separate lives suddenly seemed thinner, more permeable than the contract had intended. Dinner? He suggested as they reached the car. There's a place nearby I used to visit before VicTech took over my life. Anya studied him for a moment, perhaps searching for the business angle, then nodded. I'd like that. As they drove away, the picture from Pooja carefully placed in Anya's bag. Neither mentioned that this was their first outing with no audience to perform for. The first crack in the contract that defined their marriage of convenience. Unexpected developments. First rays of morning sunlight streamed through the penthouse windows as Vikram finished his call with the Singapore office. The merger was progressing smoothly, with final approvals expected within 2 months ahead of schedule. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he found himself distracted, glancing at the clock and wondering when Anya would return from her morning run. As if summoned by his thoughts, the elevator dinged and she entered, flushed from exercise and carrying 2 cups from the cafe downstairs. "I got your usual," she said, placing the black coffee on the counter. "Though I still don't understand how you drink it without sugar," says the woman who practically orders dessert in a cup. He replied, eyeing her caramel-topped concoction. This easy banter had developed over the past month, replacing their initial awkwardness with something resembling friendship. Their lives had begun to intertwine in small, unexpected ways, sharing meals, discussing books, even watching the occasional film together in the evening. "The Horizon legal team sent over the revised contracts," Vikram said, sipping his coffee. "They've accepted most of our terms, but they're pushing back on the employee retention clauses." Anya nodded thoughtfully. "The ones I suggested?" "Yes. Apparently guaranteeing positions for junior staff for 18 months post-merger is unprecedented." He made air quotes with his fingers. "But they agreed?" "Eventually." Vikram didn't mention the hours he'd spent arguing for these provisions, remembering how passionate Anya had been about protecting the young developers who'd helped build VicTech. "It reduced the overall valuation by about 3%, but those employees are worth it," Anya finished, a smile spreading across her face. "That's surprisingly considerate of you." Before Vikram could respond, his phone buzzed with a message that made him freeze. "What's wrong?" Anya asked, noticing his expression. "My parents," he said, his voice strangely tight. "They've just landed in Mumbai. They're coming here today." Anya set down her coffee cup. "Your parents? The ones you haven't spoken to in 5 years? Those parents?" "The very same." Vikram ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of agitation. "Apparently, news of my marriage has reached them in London, and they've decided to meet their daughter-in-law." "You didn't tell them about our arrangement?" "I haven't told them anything. We haven't exactly been on speaking terms since they opposed my leaving the family business to start VicTech." His jaw tightened. "My father called it a foolish dream." Anya absorbed this information, seeing a new dimension to the driven, controlling CEO she'd worked for. "When will they arrive?" 2 hours, he replied, checking the message again. "I could make an excuse." "No," Anya interrupted firmly. "They've flown all this way. Whatever your differences, they're making an effort." Vikram looked at her skeptically. "You don't know my parents. This isn't about reconciliation. It's about control. They've never approved of my choices. Maybe seeing your success will change that," she suggested gently. "And if not, we'll get through it together. That's what this arrangement is for, isn't it? Presenting a united front." 2 hours later, the penthouse doorbell rang. Vikram opened it to reveal an elegant couple in their 60s, Rajiv Shah, silver-haired and imposing in an expensive suit, and Sunita Shah, petite but formidable in a silk sari. "So it's true," Sunita said, her appraising gaze moving from her son to Anya, who stood beside him. "You finally married." "Mother, father," Vikram greeted them stiffly. "This is Anya, my wife." What followed was possibly the most uncomfortable lunch Anya had ever experienced. Rajiv interrogated Vikram about the business while Sunita subtly questioned Anya about her family background, education, and, most awkwardly, their plans for children. "We're focused on our careers at the moment," Anya replied diplomatically, feeling Vikram tense beside her. "Career is important," Sunita agreed with a tight smile. "But family is everything. Surely you don't want to wait too long." "Mother," Vikram warned. "I'm merely pointing out that you're 32, Vikram. By your age, your father was running the family business and had a 2-year-old son. And I'm running my own company," Vikram retorted, "one that's about to complete a merger that will make it larger than Shah Industries ever was." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Always the competitor," Rajiv said coldly. "Is that why you married so suddenly?" Another conquest to prove your success? Before Vikram could respond with what would undoubtedly escalate the situation, Anya placed her hand over his on the table. Actually, she said with surprising warmth, Vikram and I have known each other for years. Our relationship evolved naturally from mutual respect. She looked at him with convincing affection. He may seem driven to the outside world, but I've seen his compassion. Like when he insisted on protecting the jobs of our youngest employees during this merger. Vikram stared at her, momentarily thrown by her defense. Is this true? Rajiv asked, skepticism evident in his tone. Yes, Vikram confirmed, recovering quickly. Those developers represent the company's future. It would be short-sighted to lose them for a short-term financial gain. Something shifted in Rajiv's expression, not quite approval, but perhaps reassessment. As the afternoon progressed, Anya deftly steered the conversation toward neutral topics, drawing out Sunita's interest in classical dance and Rajiv's unexpected knowledge of cricket. By the time his parents left with plans to stay in Mumbai for a week, the atmosphere had thawed considerably. That was impressive, Vikram acknowledged once they were alone. Where did you learn to handle difficult people so well? I've worked for you for 3 years, Anya replied with a teasing smile. But honestly, they remind me of my own parents. Traditional expectations, high standards. The difference is that mine eventually accepted my choices. They're staying for a week, Vikram groaned, collapsing onto the sofa. 7 days of judgment and criticism. Or 7 days to show them who you really are, Anya suggested, sitting beside him. The man who built something remarkable from nothing. Vikram looked at her curiously. You actually believe that, don't you? Even knowing all my flaws and difficult moments. Especially knowing those, she replied honestly. No one succeeds without edges, Vikram. The question is what you do with your success. The following days fell into a strange pattern. Vikram's parents joined them for dinners, accompanied them to industry events, and even visited the VicTech offices. Throughout it all, Anya observed the complex dynamics of the Shah family. Vikram's desire for his father's approval, warring with his resentment. Sunita's critical nature masking genuine concern for her son's happiness. Meanwhile, Anya had been researching Horizon Technologies more thoroughly, preparing for her new role once the merger completed. What she discovered troubled her. Buried in financial reports and obscure industry publications were patterns suggesting Horizon had systematically acquired smaller companies, stripped their assets, and discarded their employees, despite initial promises of integration. One evening, while Vikram accompanied his parents to meet old family friends, Anya used her access to dig deeper into Horizon's confidential materials. In a folder labeled Post-Merger Strategy, Internal Only, she found documents contradicting everything Horizon had presented to VicTech. The redundancy plan was far more extensive than disclosed, targeting even the employees Vikram had fought to protect. Worse, there were plans to phase out VicTech's core products in favor of Horizon's inferior, but more profitable alternatives. Anya was still processing this information when her phone rang. It was Divya, her sister. Didi, you'll never believe what happened, Divya exclaimed. I've been offered a prestigious internship at Keller Medical Center in New York. That's amazing, Divya, Anya replied, genuinely thrilled. When would you start? That's the thing, in 3 weeks. But the housing stipend isn't enough for New York, and I'd need to put down a deposit immediately to secure an apartment. Anya's mind raced, calculating her finances. The payment from her arrangement with Vikram would more than cover this, but most of it was scheduled to come after the merger completed. Don't worry about money, she assured her sister. This is exactly what we've been working toward. I'll transfer funds tomorrow. After ending the call, Anya stared at the Horizon documents on her screen. The merger that would secure her financial future, and now her sister's dream opportunity, was based on deception. The same merger would likely destroy what Vikram had built, though he didn't yet realize it. When Vikram returned home later that night, he found Anya on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. You missed an excruciating evening, he said, loosening his tie and joining her. My father spent 3 hours explaining how he would have structured the Horizon deal differently. When Anya didn't respond with her usual wit, he studied her more carefully. What's wrong? We need to talk about Horizon, she said, turning to face him. I've found something you need to see. Inside, she showed him the documents, explaining her concerns. Vikram's expression darkened as he reviewed the evidence. This could be preliminary planning, not approved strategy, he suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. It's dated last week and signed by Mr. Tan himself, Anya pointed out. Vikram, they're planning to dismantle everything you've built while using your reputation to boost their stock price. Vikram paced the living room, his mind clearly racing. If we pull out now, Victech's stock will plummet. The board could vote to remove me, and the confidentiality agreements we've signed, so you'll go through with it? Anya asked incredulously. Let them destroy what you've created? What about all those employees who trusted you? I didn't say that, he replied sharply. I need time to think, to find a way out that doesn't sink the company. Anya hesitated, then spoke the thought that had been troubling her most. There's something else you should know. My sister has been offered an internship in New York. It's an incredible opportunity, but she needs money for housing immediately. Understanding dawned on Vikram's face. And your payment from our arrangement is tied to the merger completion. Yes, she admitted. But that doesn't change what I think you should do about Horizon. The right choice isn't always the convenient one. Their conversation was interrupted by the doorbell, Vikram's parents returning to collect a forgotten handbag. As Rajiv and Sunita entered, they immediately sensed the tension. Are we interrupting something? Sunita asked, her gaze moving between them. Just a business discussion, Vikram replied automatically. At this hour? Rajiv raised an eyebrow. Some problems can't wait until morning. Some problems involve people's livelihoods, Anya said, unable to contain her frustration, which should take priority over profits. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Sunita collected her handbag, but instead of leaving, she sat down deliberately on the sofa. Perhaps, she said carefully, this is a conversation we should all have. To everyone's surprise, it was Rajiv who nodded in agreement. Your mother is right. Whatever business decision you're facing, Vikram, sometimes an outside perspective helps. As midnight approached, the four of them remained deep in discussion. For the first time in years, Vikram was actually listening to his father's business advice, while Anya and Sunita discovered unexpected common ground in their concern for the human cost of corporate decisions. None of them realized it yet, but this night would mark a turning point, not just for the Horizon merger, but for the carefully constructed walls between Vikram and Anya, between business and personal, between the contract they'd signed and the feelings neither had planned for. The breaking point, the Victech headquarters buzzed with unusual tension as Vikram strode through the corridors, employees parting before him like water. 3 weeks had passed since Anya's discovery, and the atmosphere throughout the company had shifted. Rumors circulated about the Horizon merger, delays, renegotiations, possible collapse, fueled by Vikram's increasingly intense closed-door meetings and late-night conference calls. In the executive conference room, Vikram found Anya reviewing documents with Rohan Mehta, Victech's chief legal officer. The escape clause is promising, Rohan was saying, but Horizon could still sue for specific performance based on Section 12.4. Not if we can prove fraudulent representation, Anya countered. The disclosed integration plans versus their internal documents show clear intent to. She stopped as Vikram entered, exchanging a glance with him that conveyed volumes. Their relationship had evolved into something neither had anticipated, true partners in navigating this crisis. Tan called, Vikram announced. He's flying in tomorrow with the full executive team. Says he wants to resolve misunderstandings in person. Rohan grimaced. Translation, they know we found something, but how? Anya wondered. We've been careful about our investigations. Doesn't matter, Vikram said dismissively. What matters is being prepared. Rohan, have the presentation ready for the board by this evening. Anya, I've already compiled the evidence, she finished his thought, and prepared talking points for both scenarios. After Rohan left, Vikram closed the door and slumped into a chair, allowing a rare moment of vulnerability. This could all fall apart tomorrow. The merger or the company? Anya asked quietly, both potentially. The board is split. Half see Horizon's true intentions as I've presented them. The others think I'm sabotaging the deal out of ego. He rubbed his temples. 5 years building this company, and it could end over a dinner meeting tomorrow. Anya sat beside him. Whatever happens, you did the right thing. You protected your people, did I? Vikram questioned, uncharacteristic doubt in his voice. Or am I just protecting my legacy? My father certainly thinks so. Since their late-night discussion 3 weeks ago, Rajiv and Sunita had extended their stay in Mumbai. To everyone's surprise, Rajiv had become an unexpected ally, offering his business connections and experience to help Vikram navigate the situation. Their relationship remained complicated, but a tentative bridge had formed. "Your father is proud of you," Anya said firmly. "He told me so himself." Vikram looked up, startled. "When?" "Yesterday, when you were on that call with the investors. He said you had something he never did, the courage to choose principles over profit." She smiled slightly. "Though he did add that you're still impossibly stubborn." This drew a reluctant laugh from Vikram. "Genetics, presumably." As evening fell, they returned to the penthouse to find Sunita preparing dinner. The kitchen filled with enticing aromas. "You didn't need to cook, Ma," Vikram said, though his expression betrayed appreciation. "Nonsense. You both need proper food before your big meeting tomorrow." Sunita gestured for them to sit. "Rajiv has gone to meet his old friend Patel, the one who serves on 3 corporate boards. He thought some additional perspective might help." Over dinner, the conversation flowed more easily than either Vikram or Anya could have imagined when his parents first arrived. Sunita asked thoughtful questions about their strategy, offering insights from her years managing the charitable foundation attached to Shaw Industries. "The strongest position is always one of integrity," she advised. "Your father learned that too late with some of his ventures." Later, as Anya helped Sunita clear the table, the older woman broached a more personal subject. "You care for my son," she observed quietly. "And not just as his business partner." Anya nearly dropped the plate she was holding. "Mrs. Shaw, Sunita, please." She patted Anya's hand. "And don't worry, I won't embarrass you by mentioning it to him. Men can be remarkably blind to such things, especially ones as focused as my Vikram." "Our relationship is complicated," Anya managed. "The best ones always are," Sunita replied with unexpected warmth. "Just remember that behind that businessman exterior is the boy who once gave his favorite toy to a crying child in the park, then insisted it wasn't him when we tried to praise him." This glimpse into Vikram's childhood stayed with Anya as she prepared for bed. Their marriage contract had never accounted for this, developing genuine feelings for the man she'd agreed to temporarily wed. Feelings that would make their eventual separation all the more difficult. Morning arrived with a message from Divya, a photo of her standing outside her new apartment in New York, beaming with excitement. The transfer Vikram had arranged, advancing Anya's payment regardless of the merger outcome, had made it possible. Another complication in their already complex relationship. At VicTech, final preparations for the Horizon meeting consumed the day. By evening, the executive dining room had been prepared for what everyone understood might be either a reconciliation or a declaration of war. Mr. Tan arrived with 4 executives, his usual affable manner replaced with cool professionalism. "Mr. Shah, Mrs. Shah," he greeted them, the emphasis on Anya's married title slightly pointed. "Thank you for coming," Vikram replied with equal formality. "I believe we have much to discuss." What followed was a masterclass in corporate negotiation. Tan initially denied any discrepancy between Horizon's public and private plans, then pivoted to suggesting Vikram had misinterpreted standard acquisition language when presented with evidence. Finally, he offered a revised deal, one that would preserve VicTech's core products but significantly reduce its valuation. "Your concerns for your employees are admirable," Tan concluded smoothly. "But surely you understand that some redundancies are inevitable in any merger." "Inevitable but transparent," Vikram countered. "Your internal documents targeted specific teams you publicly promised to maintain." The debate continued through dinner, with both sides making marginal concessions. Anya remained mostly silent, observing the subtle power dynamics and occasionally providing data when requested. She noticed Tan watching her interactions with Vikram closely, as if searching for something. After dessert, Tan suggested he and Vikram speak privately on the balcony. Anya exchanged a glance with her husband, a silent communication to be careful. Through the glass doors, she could see their conversation growing more animated. Vikram's posture had stiffened, his expression hardening into the cold mask she had once known so well but now rarely saw. After several minutes, they returned inside, an unmistakable tension between them. "I believe we've reached an impasse," Tan announced to the room. "Perhaps a night's reflection will provide clarity." He paused, then added with deliberate casualness, "Though I wonder if personal factors might be clouding your judgment, Vikram." "Meaning?" Vikram's voice was dangerously quiet, only that sometimes our decisions are influenced by those closest to us. Tan's gaze shifted meaningfully to Anya, especially when those relationships have convenient timing. The implication hung in the air. He knew, or at least suspected, the nature of their arrangement. "I think you should leave," Vikram said coldly. After the Horizon team departed, the VicTech executives remained to debrief. Rohan voiced what everyone was thinking. They're going to try to force the merger through the board. "They can try," Vikram replied, though his confidence seemed forced. "We still have options." When the meeting finally ended past midnight, Anya and Vikram returned home in silence, both lost in thought. In the elevator, she finally asked, "What did Tan say to you on the balcony?" Vikram's jaw tightened. "He suggested that your influence was sentimental rather than strategic, that I was letting my personal feelings interfere with business." "And what did you tell him?" "That he should be careful questioning my wife's business acumen when she was the one who uncovered his deception." Despite the tension, Anya felt a flicker of warmth at his defense. But as they entered the penthouse, Vikram's demeanor changed. "He also said their legal team has been investigating our marriage," he continued, pouring himself a drink with uncharacteristic agitation. "Apparently the timing raised red flags. He implied they might expose our arrangement to the board if we don't cooperate. Can they prove anything? No, but they can create enough doubt to undermine my position." Vikram downed his drink. "The irony is remarkable. I created this fake marriage to secure the deal, and now it might be the very thing that destroys it." "Is that all you're worried about?" Anya asked quietly. "The deal?" Vikram stared at her, conflict evident in his eyes. "What else should I be worried about?" The question hung between them, laden with unspoken feelings and complications. "Nothing, apparently," Anya finally replied, disappointment clear in her voice. "It's always been about business for you, hasn't it? Even these past weeks when I thought what?" Vikram challenged, stepping closer. "That maybe this wasn't just an arrangement anymore. That maybe you'd started to see me as more than a convenient solution to your problem." She shook her head. "But I was wrong. Even now, facing the collapse of everything you've built, you're still calculating, still strategizing. What do you expect me to do?" He demanded. "Hundreds of jobs are at stake. The company I built from nothing could disappear. Of course I'm calculating." "And what about us?" Anya asked, the question she'd been avoiding for weeks finally escaping. "Where do we fit in your calculations, Vikram?" "There is no us," he snapped. "There's a contract, an arrangement with clear terms and an expiration date. We both agreed to that." The moment the words left his mouth, he knew he'd made a terrible mistake. Anya's expression froze. Vulnerability replaced by a composed mask he recognized too well. The professional assistant, not the woman who had become so much more. "You're right," she said, her voice steady despite the hurt in her eyes. "Thank you for the reminder. I almost forgot my place in this transaction." "Anya, I didn't mean—" "It's fine," she interrupted. "Really, we should focus on the Horizon situation. That's what matters," but the damage was done. For the first time in weeks, they slept in truly separate spaces. Not just different bedrooms, but different emotional worlds. The fragile connection they'd built had shattered with a few careless words. Morning brought no reconciliation. Anya left early for a previously scheduled volunteer commitment at the Literacy Center, leaving a note about meeting Vikram at the office later. But as the hours passed and emergency board meetings loomed, she didn't appear. By afternoon, concern had replaced Vikram's frustration. Calls to her phone went unanswered. The Literacy Center confirmed she had never arrived. It wasn't until Vikram returned to the penthouse that he found her letter on the dining table. "Vikram, you were right last night. We had an arrangement with clear terms, and I allowed myself to forget that. My feelings have compromised my objectivity, which serves neither of us. I've accepted a job offer from an educational nonprofit I've been volunteering with. They need someone to oversee their expansion program immediately, and I need space to regain perspective." All the evidence against Horizon is organized in the secure folder we created. Rohan has everything he needs for the legal strategy. As for our arrangement, I release you from any remaining obligations. The advance payment was more than generous. I truly hope you find the right path forward with VicTech. Whatever you decide, I know it will be because you believe it's best for the company you built. Anya enclosed with the letter was her wedding ring. Vikram stood motionless, the letter crumpled in his hand, experiencing something he hadn't felt in years, absolute unstrategic panic. For the first time since founding VicTech, his mind wasn't calculating next steps or contingency plans. There was only the hollow realization that he had pushed away the one person who had seen him, truly seen him, beyond his success, his failures, or his family name. His phone rang insistently. The board meeting, Horizon, the future of his company, all of it suddenly seemed empty without Anya beside him, challenging him, believing in him. As he stared at the wedding ring glinting on the table, Vikram finally understood what his father had tried to tell him weeks ago. Some successes came at too high a cost. Some losses couldn't be recovered with clever business strategy. He had built VicTech from nothing once before. If necessary, he could do it again. But the connection he'd found with Anya, that might be irreplaceable. With sudden clarity, Vikram knew what he needed to do. He picked up the phone, but instead of answering the board's call, he dialed his father's number. "Dad?" he said when Rajiv answered, the unfamiliar word feeling right for the first time in years. "I need your help." Rewriting the contract, rain pounded against the windows of the small office tucked above a bookstore in Mumbai's education district. Anya stared at the grant proposal on her computer screen, the words blurring together after hours of revision. 3 weeks had passed since she'd left the penthouse and the life she'd temporarily inhabited with Vikram. 3 weeks of throwing herself into work with the Bright Futures Foundation, helping expand their literacy programs to rural communities. Her phone chimed with a message from Divya, a selfie from her hospital rotation in New York, tired but beaming in her white coat. "First week complete. You should see the apartment now that I've decorated."
"When are you visiting?"
Anya smiled despite her melancholy. At least something good had come from the arrangement with Vikram, her sister's dream realized. She started typing a reply when a notification banner appeared at the top of her screen. VicTech CEO steps down amid merger controversy. Her heart stuttered. Fingers trembling slightly, she opened the business news site. In a shocking development, Vikram Shah has resigned as CEO of VicTech, the company he founded 6 years ago. The announcement comes days after the collapse of the highly anticipated merger with Horizon Technologies. Sources close to the board indicate that Shah's resignation was voluntary, despite having sufficient votes to maintain his position. Anya read the article twice, struggling to process the information. Vikram had walked away from VicTech. It seemed impossible. The company had been his entire identity, his life's achievement, the thing he'd sacrificed everything for, including any chance they might have had together. A knock at her office door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, quickly closing the browser tab. Namrata, the foundation's director, poked her head in. "I'm heading out. Don't stay too late, the rain's getting worse." "Just finishing this proposal," Anya assured her. 20 more minutes tops. After Namrata left, Anya found herself opening the browser again, searching for more news about Vikram. The business press was rife with speculation. Was he planning a new venture? Had he been forced out despite the official statement? Where had he disappeared to after the press conference? No answers, just questions. Much like those that had plagued her since leaving. Had she made the right choice? Had their connection been real or merely a product of circumstance? She forced herself to close the browser and return to the grant proposal. The foundation needed this funding to launch their teacher training program. Personal regrets would have to wait. The office had grown dark when she finally finished, the rain still falling steadily outside. Gathering her things, Anya locked up and descended the narrow staircase to the bookstore below. Usually closed at this hour, a light unexpectedly glowed from within. The owner must have forgotten to turn it off. As she reached the bottom step, Anya froze. Through the glass door, she could see a familiar figure browsing the education section. Vikram, rain-dampened and more casually dressed than she'd ever seen him. in jeans and a simple button-down shirt. For a moment she considered retreating upstairs, but before she could decide, he looked up and saw her. Their eyes met through the glass, and the world seemed to pause between one heartbeat and the next. Taking a deep breath, Anya pushed open the door. "The store's closed," she said, aiming for normalcy despite her racing pulse. "I know," Vikram replied. "Mr. Desai let me in. Apparently I look trustworthy now that I'm not wearing $1,000 suits." An awkward silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken words. "I read about VicTech," Anya finally said. "I'm sorry. Are you?" Vikram asked, studying her face. "Of course. I know what the company meant to you." He nodded slowly. "It did mean everything to me. Once." Another silence, broken only by the rhythm of rain against the windows. "How did you find me?" Anya asked. "Your sister," Vikram admitted. "I called to check that her internship was going well, and she mentioned your new job. The rest was simple deduction." "Why are you here, Vikram?" The question came out more vulnerable than she'd intended. Instead of answering immediately, he pulled a folded document from his pocket and held it out to her. "I brought this." Anya recognized it instantly. Their marriage contract, the document that had defined their relationship and its limitations. "I don't understand," she said, making no move to take it. "I think we need to renegotiate," Vikram replied, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "The original terms, they're no longer acceptable to me." "What terms would you propose instead?" Anya asked carefully. Vikram gestured to the small reading area near the window, where comfortable chairs faced each other across a low table. Once seated, he began speaking with the directness she had always appreciated. "After you left, I realized something I should have seen much earlier. VicTech was never just my company. It was built by the people who believed in my vision, who worked alongside me." He paused. "People like you?" "I was just doing my job," Anya demurred. "No," Vikram shook his head firmly. "You did far more than that. You challenged me when everyone else was afraid to. You saw problems I was blind to. You cared about the people behind the profit margins." Rain streamed down the windows, creating shifting patterns across their faces in the dim light. The Horizon merger would have destroyed everything worth preserving at VicTech. Vikram continued. "Not just the products or the jobs, but the culture, the purpose. When the board deadlocked, I had a choice. Fight to maintain control or step aside for someone who shared the original vision but could approach it with fresh perspective." "Rohan," Anya guessed. Vikram nodded. "With my recommendation and my father's support, surprisingly enough. They've restructured the company as a private entity again, with an employee ownership component." "That's unexpected," Anya admitted, "but I still don't understand what this has to do with our contract." Vikram leaned forward, his expression more open than she had ever seen it. "Everything. Because the man who signed that contract believed success was measured in acquisition values and market share. He saw relationships as transactions, even marriage. And now?" Anya asked, her heart beating faster despite her attempts to remain composed. "Now I know better," he said simply. "I've spent 3 weeks thinking about what truly matters, what kind of life I want to build, and I keep coming back to one conclusion." He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his skin. "I miss you, Anya. Not as my assistant or my pretend wife, but as the person who made me want to be better." The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. This was not the calculating CEO she had worked for, nor even the complex man she had lived with. This was someone new, or perhaps someone who had been there all along beneath the layers of ambition and control. "What about your next venture?" she asked. "I assume you have plans." "I do," he acknowledged. "But they're different now. I've been working with educational technology startups, looking for ones that align with what you've been passionate about. Expanding access, supporting teachers, closing resource gaps." Anya blinked in surprise. "That's quite a shift from enterprise software, is it?" Vikram smiled slightly. "Or is it just applying the same skills to something more meaningful?" He pulled out his phone, showing her a presentation he'd been developing. "This one has potential. They've created adaptive learning tools for under-resourced schools, but they need help scaling. And this one is developing teacher training platforms that could complement what your foundation is doing." As he explained his ideas, Anya saw the same brilliance that had built VicTech. but channeled in a new direction, one that aligned with the values she had quietly tried to instill in him. "You've been busy," she observed when he finished. "Not busy enough to forget what matters most," Vikram replied, finally taking her hand in his. "Anya, I'd like to tear up our old contract and propose a new one." "What kind of contract?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "One without an expiration date. One based on partnership, not convenience." His eyes held hers steadily. One where both parties acknowledge that what began as an arrangement has become something neither expected. Anya's throat tightened with emotion. "That's a significant revision to the original terms." "I know," Vikram agreed. "And I understand if you need time to consider. But I wanted you to know that my feelings for you are real. Probably the most real thing in my life right now." The bookstore had grown darker as they talked, the rain creating a cocoon of privacy around them. Through the window, Mumbai continued its frantic pace, oblivious to the life-changing conversation happening in this quiet corner. "I have questions," Anya said after a long moment. "Of course," Vikram nodded. "Where would we live?" "Wherever makes sense for both our work. The penthouse never felt like a home until you were there, but I'm open to something completely new." "And my foundation work?" "Essential," he said firmly. "I wouldn't ask you to give up something that matters to you. In fact, I was hoping we might find ways to combine our efforts." Anya considered his words carefully. "And your parents? They never knew our marriage was arranged?" "They suspected at first," Vikram admitted with a small smile. "But my mother told me recently that she knew we were truly right for each other when she saw how you stood up to me about the Horizon employees." "She said something similar to me," Anya recalled, remembering Sunita's perceptive comments. "Your parents are smarter than you gave them credit for." "Among many things I've been wrong about," Vikram acknowledged ruefully. Anya looked down at their joined hands, then back to his face. "You understand this won't be easy. Real relationships require compromise, patience, communication, all things the CEO Vikram wasn't exactly known for." "I'm learning," he promised. "And I have an excellent teacher if she's willing." The sincerity in his eyes was impossible to doubt. This was not a business strategy or a calculated move. This was a man who had reevaluated everything he thought he wanted and found it lacking without her. "I have one condition," Anya said finally. "Name it. No more contracts between us." She squeezed his hand. "Just promises we both intend to keep." Vikram's face broke into a genuine smile, the unguarded expression she had glimpsed only rarely during their arrangement, but had treasured each time. "Deal," he agreed, then corrected himself. "I mean promise." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something that glinted in the dim light. Her wedding ring, paired now with one that was clearly his own. "These were part of an arrangement," he said, placing them on the table between them. "If we decide to wear rings again someday, they should be ones we choose together, for the right reasons." The gesture, symbolic but meaningful, touched Anya deeply. It acknowledged their unusual beginning while leaving space for a genuine future. "So," Vikram asked, vulnerability evident in his voice, "what do you think? Should we try this for real?" Outside, the rain had finally stopped, the sudden silence making the moment feel even more significant. Through the window, Anya could see stars appearing between breaking clouds, an unusual sight in Mumbai's light-polluted sky. Instead of answering immediately, she stood and pulled him to his feet. "Come with me," she said, leading him toward the bookstore door. On the sidewalk outside, the city smelled fresh from the rain, the usual dust and exhaust temporarily washed away. Anya turned to face Vikram, the streetlights illuminating his questioning expression. "I wanted to do this properly," she explained. "Not hiding in a dark bookstore, but right here in the real world. Because that's where this would happen in reality, not in some arranged scenario." Taking both his hands in hers, Anya looked up at the man who had entered her life as a demanding boss, become her contractual husband, and now stood before her as something entirely different. A partner, offering not convenience but commitment. "Yes," she said simply. "I think we should try this for real." The kiss that followed was nothing like the chaste, awkward one they had shared at their civil ceremony months ago. This was a beginning rather than a transaction, a promise rather than a contract. As they walked hand in hand through the rain-washed streets, Anya thought about the strange path that had led them here. What had begun as the CEO's accidental bride had transformed into something neither of them had been looking for, but both now recognized as irreplaceable. Later that evening, as they sat on the balcony of Anya's small apartment sharing a simple meal, Vikram raised his glass in a toast. To rewriting the contract, he said, his eyes warm with affection. Anya clinked her glass against his. To no contracts at all, she countered with a smile. Just us figuring it out as we go. As the lights of Mumbai sparkled below them, they began planning their future, not with the precision of a business arrangement, but with the hopeful uncertainty of a love that had found its way through the most unlikely of beginnings. This time, there would be no expiration date, no exit clauses, no predetermined outcomes. Just two people who had discovered that the most valuable partnerships couldn't be negotiated on paper. They could only be written in the heart, one day at a time.